Greetings to the viewers of the Burn Power Anadromist channel from Salina, Kansas.
We're going to devote our energies to sports and gardening, all the cultural pursuits as far as they're concerned. In fact, we're going to put the goons to sleep. Meanwhile, we dig.
Greetings, this is Burn Power, the Anadromist, coming to you on New Year's Day. Actually, it's the night before, 2 nights before. But we're pretending right now, even though it feels dark, that it's New Year's Day. And of course, I'm in Tbilisi, Georgia. And I do have friends coming over tomorrow night. We have some champagne to sample and some other little festive goodies. And then we're going to go out into the park and go above the park into the mountain a little bit and look down on all the fireworks that are going out. And I thought this year, the end of 2022, beginning of 2023 would be a good year to do something a little different. I'm always looking for something. I keep experimenting with the form, looking for something, a way that I can do something that is interesting, not only to you, but to me. And so this year, we're going to do something that I've been thinking about for several years. And first of all, we're going to do a very, very quick, by my standards, it'll be about 15 minutes long, review of the year. Now, I'm not going to spend time commenting on all these things because it's just way too complicated, and you don't want a 6-hour video out of me, and I don't want to make a 6-hour video right away for a year or 2 or 3, commenting on the year that came. I've made my long videos. I'm fine. But I decided we're going to just run through the year. We're also going to do something very different. I've thought this is kind of a question and answer thing, but it was my question to you who are watching. Obviously, not everyone participated. Otherwise it would be an extremely long video. I've got 2,000 subscribers. I figure there's 300 hardcore people who follow me and fewer who contribute to the channel, which you can do through the link down below. And, it's just the way it works. I have over 1,000 friends on Facebook. Yeah, there's just a small handful every now and then who interact. It's an interesting thing. I guess it's the Pareto distribution in a certain way. But the next thing, what I did ask was what was the year like for you? Because it was an unusual year, and that's the reason for me going through the year in review, just to say, in case you were thinking that things were strange, look at what happened this year. And to make this like a time capsule. So I asked, what was your year like? And what are your hopes and fears for 2023? And I started to get, I kind of got off on the wrong foot. The video was blocked because of a piece of music I used accidentally. And then, it just seemed like I put it out there too late. Nevertheless, I think I got about 20 people who have contributed. I do wish there were more women who would have contributed, but I guess that's just the way it works on this channel, that there's more men who will jump to do something than women in this context, but I entreat you women, next time there's a call, please contribute. But we do have some faces that you may recognize from other videos and some of my Anadromous Dialogues. I'm not going to say everyone who's here. I did mention a few names. Paul VanderKlay is here. Grizwald is here. Alastair Roberts has joined us. And there are others. So, but it doesn't matter. I have not edited these. I've let everyone stand as there are. And I did specify that, not less than a minute, not over 5 minutes. Well, of course, people do what they do. So I have one that's 18 seconds long, and another one that's 16 minutes long. But they were great. So I let them slide. Why hold people down to the grill and make them speak, the way I want them to? They're going to speak the way they want to. And emotionally, it's a roller coaster. People had many different years. Some people had very good years. Other people had very confusing, complicated years. And some people within their own lives, I'm sure some of you, have had up and down years. If you like this, then please let me know in the comments below. Bern, make sure you do this again like next New Year's or something like that, if you like this particular format. And we're going to end it with my own breakdown of, what my year was like. But I'll tell you a little bit more about that when we get there. Meanwhile, let's start the year in review. And what a year it has been. So let's go very briefly through the events of 2022. I am not going to comment much on any of these. My point is just to show you, if you thought the last year was weird, you're not alone. Last year, 2021, that was a weird year. 2020 was like a comet hitting the planet. 2022 is equally as crazy as 2020, if not in some ways more so. So again, I'm not going to say what I think this means, what I think that means, what side of certain political discussions I'm on. That's not my point. My point is simply to say, whoa. These are our times. For those of you who say things like, oh, if only I could have lived in the 60s when things were changing. It's just like, we're here. We're in the 2020s. Enjoy. So the Cold Civil War continues in January. And I am doing these roughly in chronological order, though not strictly in chronological order. And the Cold Civil War continues. The Cold Civil War is the woke, anti-woke, critical race theory, people wanting freedom, people saying you're not free to say whatever you want, don't hurt anyone's feelings, issues related to the trans movement, which people will swear isn't a movement, all of these things. But so the Cold Civil War continues. Along with that, we started off the year with COVID continuing. Does anyone remember the Canadian trucker convoy? Even more obscure is the forgotten American convoy, which happened to get to the East Coast and to Washington, D.C. exactly when Russia invaded Ukraine. Which brings us to February 24th. And of course, that's when Russia invades Ukraine. And I'm not going to go into all the stuff. One of the things I can say is that this unleashed, among many other things, a propaganda war all around. And even among the people who were kind of together as co-belligerents on one side of the fence, they were split. So some people were in favor of Ukrainian help and assistance and intervention, whatever, and other people were absolutely opposed to it. And we're not even talking left and right here. We're talking, this is all in one sphere, we'll call it the anti-woke. On the woke side, suddenly everyone starts wearing pins. Nobody understands Ukraine. I mean, there are some people who think they do, but the truth is, up until February 24th, most people couldn't tell you anything about Ukraine. And that includes the people who are now saying we should do this, we shouldn't do that. But also what was set off was literally hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of refugees coming not only out of Ukraine, but also people fleeing Putin's Russia. And we'll mention this a bit more later. COVID finally peters out It's almost, someone once said, there was like a meme or something where it was like, okay, we're almost done with COVID, and then there's I wanted to say Vladimir Lenin. Vladimir Putin puts his beer down and says, hold my beer, and then suddenly it's the Ukrainian invasion. But literally places like Poland, many countries in Europe, suddenly were swamped with refugees. And this happened here in Georgia, which, like I said, I'll mention in a moment. There were continuing controversies surrounding Disney and the Disney Corporation all through the year. Their political films and television shows, their involvement with the supposedly Don't Say Gay bill, which it was never a Don't Say Gay bill. It was a don't tell our children about sex when they're like 5 years old, but it was purposely misconstrued, and Disney had a lot to do with that. There was also the financial losses that Disney has started to take through their colonies of companies like Marvel, Pixar, Star Wars. These franchises started just pumping out the woke agenda and essentially started losing audiences because really nobody wants to hear this stuff in a mass popular context. People want good movies. They don't want to be lectured to. They don't want, mandatory diversity casts. They don't want unreal things just to make a political point. And this was Disney's biggest failing of the year. And then there was the convoluted saga, which still continues, of Elon Musk and Twitter, which literally went through most of the year. I'm not even going to begin to discuss it. This isn't how we got here or anything like that. All I can say is, wow, lots there. Then we had, this was a momentous event, and depending on where you align politically, you have one set of thoughts or another, but the Supreme Court struck down the Roe versus Wade and sent it back to the states. Then there's the assassination of the former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. So, will anyone remember that from this year? Well, I do. That's when it started to strike me, what kind of year is this? The tensions arose between China and Taiwan, which, if those erupted while Russia was trying to invade Ukraine or invading Ukraine, well, this would essentially set off some sort of global conflagration. So thankfully, they didn't get much bigger. And then some people were trying to make the monkeypox scare happen. And yeah, there was this thing called monkeypox. It didn't really travel. It required, shall we say, rather close contact. And certain people who engaged in rather close contact in larger gatherings seemed to be the people who were most affected by it. But maybe someone should question these larger gatherings. And just to give us almost like a bit of, distraction from all of this, came the trial of Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. I'm sure no one thinks about it much anymore, but in the middle of the year, this thing was like on everyone's lips. It was like this crazy circus of distraction from the bigger events, and maybe we needed it. Then, more importantly, there was the revolt of the Dutch farmers over some of the legislation that's being applied to the European Union related to, a certain amount of land within a country having to be natural again, and which would basically kill off a large percentage of the independent, and that's the key word here, independent Dutch farmers' livelihood. And so there was that. Economic woes in general started rising as a result of, I would say, first of all, COVID, printing extra money, bad policies in different governments. And of course, then there's the economic problems caused by the war in Ukraine, which we're still waiting to deal with, including fears of a global famine. Fortunately, wheat shipments started coming out of Odessa again, but all of that much less than normal. We still don't know what this is going to mean. And one of the more important things in the middle of the year was the death of Queen Elizabeth II in the UK. And what I found most interesting about this was the fact that it was a last moment. When you watched these solemn processions, and I watched so many hours of it, and I just got fascinated watching the processional, because I felt like there's something about this that was right. Remembering a queen who certainly had her faults, but for the most part, from my perspective, really was a Christian. She was like the last remnant in the culture of the world, pre-hysteria of the recent era, kind of reaching back. And I mean, I don't even want to go all the way, but there was just something, particularly in that procession, it was almost like we were watching the past disappear. And then there's the German energy crisis, which has already changed many German habits, and not only Germany, other countries as well, but Germany was hit particularly hardest by the fact that they had aligned way too much with their energy policies with Russia. And we're still waiting to see what the winter really does. I mean, in a way, well, I could go anyway. I'm not even going to try to predict that. Then there seemed to be some sort of trans-mobilization.
Trans people are sacred. We are the divine. We're practicing our divinity by expressing authenticity.
And it's been going on all year, where if 2020 was the year of Black Lives Matter, this seemed to be in every school in particularly the UK and America and Canada. More and more was being unraveled, this strange view of humanity that we can simply decide to be whatever we are, and we can do this to young children, and we can, that somehow the boundaries of what it means to be human, male and female, to be responsible for the image we present to other people, suddenly it's like it all stopped mattering, except then there was a huge pushback on this from the right, particularly with Matt Walsh's book, What is a Woman, which put him up to, I think he just got voted Transphobe of the Year, which he was like, great. Because and I think what's happened with this issue is the wave has crested. And the wave has crested on the BLM stuff. The wave has crested. It's still a big wave coming in, but it's no longer what it was because it has been pushed to such extremes. And it's not that it's gone away. It's just, and it could even get more intense as we go into the future, the way a wounded animal gets more intense. But these ideologies are so powerful. And yet, at the same time, I think they've just gone too far. But not to be outdone, the there's a word I want to use here, but it's a word starts with an F that's way too used. But nevertheless, I feel it's valid here. In a way, what we started to see in the last few months of the year was a preview of the coming insanity coming from the ecosphere, just absolute hysteria, and people gluing themselves to famous works of art, gluing themselves to the street, and saying basically there won't be a world if we don't do something immediately, not realizing if you did something immediately, the entire world would go into chaos, and it would be a nightmare, and millions of people would die in any sort of immediate plan that would call for immediate, for instance, just stop oil, which is what they called themselves. And then, of course, there was the return of Donald Trump as a specter into the political life. I will just mention that without any comment. You can take from it what you will. And then there was this whole thing of Iranian protests, which on one hand can be seen as a sign of perhaps something, a change coming to Iran. And on the other side can be seen as these poor people are just going to be crushed by the powers that be from the Republican Guard. Well, let's hope that there is some freedom that comes there.
Io non ho un approccio confessionale a questa materia. Credo in Dio, ma non ho un approccio confessionale a questa materia. Fatevene una ragione. Io faccio queste battaglie per laico buonsenso. Sono una persona abituata a farsi delle domande anche scomode, anche profonde. Quando mi faccio quelle domande voglio delle risposte che siano credibili, e a troppe domande che mi sono fatte in questi anni i sacerdoti del pensiero unico non sono stati in grado di dare delle risposte sensate. E ne posso fare a decine di queste domande. È giusta una società che spende molte più energie e risorse a trovare modi immediati, facili, veloci per liberarsi della vita umana piuttosto che per favorirla? È normale, la puoi chiamare civiltà. È giusto che mentre un cucciolo di cane giustamente non può essere strappato appena nato dal grembo della madre, lo si possa fare con un bambino figlio di una madre disperata che lo vende, comprato da due uomini ricchi?
Yeah, and then the win of Giorgia Meloni in Italy as their president, which is really, she's an interesting person. The Western media tried to make her out to be a fascist, the leftist Western media, but she's no fascist. I mean, just listen to her. I mean, she's not trying to reject the EU. She's not trying to set herself up as a goddess or something, but she is critical of waves of immigration which have hit the southern shores of Italy in the last few years quite heavily, and it is something that simply can't go on the way it was. France wins the World Cup. Hooray, France. I'm kind of a Francophile myself. Against Morocco, which set off waves of riots in France of French versus Moroccan people. Now, the Moroccans had been, every time they would win one of the matches, they would have a riot. I don't know, a celebration riot or something. But they really ripped up places in Paris and such, which I don't understand. But, and this has happened in places in America, after football games and such, where the winning team goes out and just goes nuts. I don't understand this. I have to say, I don't understand it. But the media tends to have consolidated everything that's happened in the year by December 1st. And I remember I first noticed this effect, I don't know, what year was it, 1979 or so, when The Who had a concert where 11 people were crushed, or The Who, the rock band, had a concert where 11 people were crushed in mid-December. And it was never featured as something that happened the year. This is the weird thing that happens is, so the media then goes, the next time they do this, they start in January and go to December 1st. And nothing that happens in December counts as something that happened during the year. And so what's happened is there's been riots that have been going on as I speak, most likely, in Paris related to the Kurdish people there. And it's cars being overturned, fires on the street, the whole thing. But in the future, this won't have happened because it happened in December. Meanwhile, in Canada, you remember them, they had this whole convoy thing, and then they've been implementing, shall we say, radical healthcare euthanasia procedures. I mean, there was that song from South Park in their movie, and it goes, Blame Canada, and you'd sing like, Blame Canada, But the funny thing is that was just a joke. Everyone knew it was a joke. But now Canada has become one of the strangest, most Orwellian places in the name of health and safety. I will go no further under that, except to say that people have been, mental health people have been like practically opening the door and saying, come in. Oh, you're feeling really bad? Well, have you considered some of our other options? And they don't mean extra pills, except perhaps as they lead towards perfect peace. And finally, in the December disappearance zone comes one of the hugest storms that ever happened in America. A massive, they're calling it a bomb cyclone, but it basically is this thing that just erupts. But it started you started seeing signs of it on the West Coast, and it's basically affecting the entirety of continental America, which is fascinating and weird to watch. And meanwhile, I've been going back to where I lived in Haines, Alaska, looking at the weather there. It's like, yeah, it's not bad for winter, not compared to what's going on in Buffalo, New York. And of course, the war in Ukraine with the Russian invasion continues. And this remains the single most important defining thing for the entire year. And there are many people who don't want to hear about it anymore because, of course, people in the West have attention deficit disorder, so they can't hear a news story for more than a week before it's like, just stop. You're going on for this too long. But anyway, what happens in Ukraine in the winter, what happens in Germany, the strength of the winter in Europe, maybe America is taking the hit so that Europe can remain relatively calm. That would be nice, because the colder, the worse the winter, this year in particular, the worse things will be all around for not just Germany, Ukraine, Poland, Russia, but for the rest of us. So just the year in review. What can we say? A crazy year. I think we were in some sort of weird political strange zone from the middle of the last decade up to 2020. Then 2020 came and all bets were off, and everything since 2020 has just been crazy in so many different ways. Nevertheless, as I just said, there are I meet people saying, oh, I wish I'd lived like you during the 60s, although I was pretty young during the 60s. And, because things were really changing. And my feeling is, skip the time travel. You're there. You're in a period as crazy as the 60s. But the nice thing about this moment is it gives us a chance to change. Things are in flux, which means more questions are open. We can do more. You think of something to do and do it, because everything is going to change. I think the movie industry is going to radically change soon. Get in on it. I think the art, culture, it's all going to radically change. And by radically change, I mean not just a shift in styles. I mean, so many things are going to change. So, if you have really interesting ideas, really honest thoughts, dive in. And those ideas are reflected in the many different answers that I got to the question, what was your year like? And I would like to we're just going to start in just a moment. And like I said before, some of these are longer than others. Some of these are super short. It's going to take at least an hour. Enjoy.
It is past 5 o'clock on Saturday, so it is officially Christmas. My toddler is climbing over my shoulder, adding some well-deserved noise. Merry Christmas to all the Anadromist family. Thank you for putting this together, Bern, and thank you so much for all your videos. This is Gregory Ross saying Merry Christmas, everyone. May the new year be happy.
2022 has been a great year for me. My son started university, and I started my own YouTube channel. And I hope 2023 will be a great year for everybody. Thank you.
Greetings to the viewers of the Burn Power Anadromist channel from Salina, Kansas.
It can't simply be, greetings from Salina, Kansas. I'm wishing you all a happy new year. I don't want that. I want something that's at least 1 minute long with a little bit of substance that gives us a sense of what your life's been like, the good or bad, or both. Or you could just do, this is what happened last year, this is how I saw things.
Okay, well, this is what happened last year. This is how I saw things. Everybody was locked down, and then the legislation started, and they let everybody out just in time to remind them that they can go to war whenever they want to and channel billions of dollars into weapon sales. It feels like the fourth year of the tribulation, and it looks like it's going to be a very bleak winter. I am a human being who has been alive during this period as well. The only thing that makes the darkness bearable is each other.
The year was 1943. Richard Kroner, after a delay not connected with the lectures themselves, was finally able to see his own contribution to the storied Gifford lectures come into print as a handsome hardcover titled The Primacy of Faith. But I suppose I should back up a bit. The Giffords, the perennial public exploration of so-called natural theology, and Super Bowl equivalent for theology nerds all throughout the Anglosphere and beyond. You may have heard that Karl Barth, one of the most significant Christian theologians of the 20th century, infamously declared himself an avowed opponent of all natural theology in his own Gifford lecture, quite possibly still the most famous of them all, precisely because of that flagrant academic fuck you such a punk rock and subversive attitude displayed, effectively assaulting the very raison d'etre of a prestigious and elite institution from its own platform and podium. Maybe that's why he enjoyed the rock star-like status he did in the larger culture, even appearing on the cover of Time magazine. Hard to imagine such notoriety for a theologian in our day, although the modern equivalent of that would be something more like Paul VanderKlay getting his own Netflix special. Still, an impressive man with a well-deserved place in our collective memory and imagination. But, as if in confirmation of Burns' own constant cautions regarding online research, something you won't find on the Wikipedia page listing the various Gifford lectures, at least at this precise moment, is a response to Barth delivered at St. Andrews the following academic year, right on the heels of that famous no to natural theology, which still reverberates through Christian thought today. Richard Kroner, tragically obscure, in spite of teaching as a respected colleague alongside such giants of Western thought as Edmund Husserl and Martin Heidegger himself. Richard Kroner, who gave the young promising theologian named Paul Tillich his first faculty position. Richard Kroner, who wrote the authoritative treatment of German idealism, still respected and used in European scholarship to this day. But this was just his first life. Both he and his wife Alice had Jewish ancestry, prompting the sudden violent disruption and dissolution of his classroom by Nazi stormtroopers in 1934, thus ending his academic career and life in Germany forever. So Richard Kroner would start again in the English-speaking world, spending the rest of his life devoting his significant intellectual powers and erudition to elucidating the boundary line between philosophy and religion, the original title of his 1939 Gifford Lectures. He penned a magisterial 3-volume history of Western thought from a Christian perspective, exploring the interplay between speculation and revelation, recommended with almost comical enthusiasm by Van Til, who was known to emphatically charge his students to buy it. If you can't buy it, borrow it. If you can't borrow it, steal it. His longtime student, turned sometimes editor, colleague, and friend, John Skinner, wrote, "His contribution to contemporary religious thought should be more widely known." I could not agree more. So allow me to commend his work to you in this new year with his own words from that anadromous response to the indomitable Karl Barth. The standpoint of the following treatise may be outlined in advance. I try to show that a natural theology cannot be prohibited by dogmatics, as Karl Barth would have it, but also that a merely rational faith, as provided by Kant, is not tenable. Reason needs the supplement of revealed religion. In such a way, thought and faith do not contradict, but rather complement each other. In this relationship, faith has the primacy. It surpasses the power of reason and completes its undertaking. I might call this standpoint a modern conservatism. It does not inaugurate a new orthodoxy, but it shows the legitimate right of a supernatural and even super-rational faith, of that faith which was and is, and I trust will ever be, the basis and the source of our life. The tendency towards the humanization of religion is passing. It led finally to the dehumanization of man, and thus it refuted itself.
Everybody, this is Job from below sea level in the Netherlands. I hope you're all having a nice last few days of the year, that strange period in between Christmas and New Year's where you still feel like eating all the various leftovers from the Christmas feasts, but also are kind of painfully aware that the New Year is coming and you probably shouldn't indulge so much anymore in a week or so. That said, 2022, asks Bern, what were my thoughts on it? Well, mostly, honestly, without not talking about any of the large geopolitical things, 2022 was the year of trying to figure out how to be a good dad, and my wife and I became parents in August 2021, so a lot of 2022 was just how are we good parents, and what do we do when the kid suddenly doesn't want to be spoon-fed anymore but wants to feed himself, or when he's teething or wakes up screaming, and all that stuff that you just think you'll sort of figure out, and in the end you will, but takes a while. So yeah, 2022, almost lost our pastor to a double ruptured aorta. Luckily, he survived at the young age of 52, so we're glad he's still around. I became an elder in the church for the segment of 16 to 30-year-olds, about 100 young people, and I find it very difficult because the conversations can be they can be tough conversations, and a lot of it reminds me about, well, to segue there, the Estuary Festival and conversations I've had there with people, and that was such a large part of 2022, besides the whole parenthood thing, is, well, traveling with John and Paul and Bern and meeting all you fine folks, or at least a bunch of you, in the German festival. And yeah, I'm hoping, going into what my hopes are for 2023, that I'll meet some of you again in the next year. And, well, to repeat what I said about parenthood, my wife and I today found out we're expecting a second child, so it looks like that might be given to us, and we're just really grateful for that. It's exciting as usual, but also like, wow, 2 kids, and the first one was really pretty rough, and like I said, we were figuring that out, but I'm sure we'll do all right. I hope that I'll meet some of you fine folks in 2023 again, maybe at another festival, maybe at just some estuary gathering. I hope you will all have a wonderful 2023, and, well, God bless you all. Bye-bye.
Hey Bern, hope you had a good Christmas. 2022, for me it was an interesting year as far as I moved from California to Pennsylvania the year prior in November, and that basically bled over to 2022, and we're just here kind of, we don't really know too many people. It's just my wife, my sons, and a couple family here, and so we've had a lot of time to reflect, a lot of time to be alone with thinking, and with the scriptures and different things, and being able to kind of get out of the battling, the culture war, all that stuff, and kind of just seeing it as an observer instead of taking part. Everybody seems to think they know everything, but in reality, it's probably likely we don't know much when it comes to all the stuff out there and all the propaganda with the war in Russia and all this stuff that happened. And I just been thinking about a few things lately. One is that I saw a video of a Russian soldier in a trench, supposedly. A drone launches a little bomb and it blows up in his hole. And he takes out a hand grenade because he's so injured, or he's had enough, and he puts it to his head and he blows himself up. He's dead, and who knows how old he was. He could have been 18, he could have been 30. And I saw in the video the comments on this, like people saying, goodbye, orc, There was some sympathetic ones, but majority was kind of saying, look at him fly or something. And I would say that's probably the worst humanity has to offer as far as treatment of human life. Short of killing someone, I mean, that's it, What I hope for 2023 is that I believe that everything is being demystified. So everything seems to be peaking as far as where we're heading, as far as ignorance and anger and everything. But I also see it as peaking into a point where it looks silly anymore. Like war just looks so brutal and fruitless that I hope the lesson is to not continue these things and try to find diplomatic solutions, because it's so horrible, the drones and all this stuff. But I obviously realize that's naive. But I believe there is some hope in that everything is being so demystified that maybe people will know that, not to put so much trust in institutional, hierarchy, politicians and these things, and not to get on a bandwagon on, say, as a conservative thing to go battle this liberal thing. I hope that we stop looking at all this stuff and start going more spiritual in a sense, find some common ground as far as art and things like this, but I don't know if that's possible. But I've been able to do it myself, and that's basically the hope I have, is to unplug, being able to unplug from all the political craziness, because I know I can't really affect that, but what I can affect is my connection with God, and I've been able to do that through, obviously, the Bible, and personally other books outside the Bible, like Enoch and Gospel of Thomas and all these books. And Gospel of Thomas has this one where it says, be passers-by, supposedly Jesus said. That was one thing he said, be passers-by, and I think that's where I am now, is trying to be a passerby, which how I'm interpreting it is to observe what people are doing, be kind, and if somebody's hurt, to help, but not to get embedded with the particular message or whatever somebody's pushing, and just to step back from all pundits, from everything, because everything that was trusted in 2020 and everything everybody was all shocked about, I feel like it's all been demystified, even the pundits. And now it's time to I think God wants us all to look in. I think that's why there's such a peak in misery and a peak in all this stuff, is because he wants us to not see it out there, like within what somebody's saying, like a pundit or somebody, but to seek what is he telling us within and through the word. And I guess he's all around in everything. So I think he wants us to find him again. And that might not come from necessarily trusting what so-and-so says about it, but to actually look for yourself, to see it in the Bible or in whatever scripture and within you, and that it is there, that we are from his mind, and we exist, and we came from somewhere. And I think he wants us to see that he's always been there, and that there is no separation. The veil has been torn. And that's what I hope for next year, is that we can just not trust all these different things, and kind of just start to talk again, and to study and to learn again, see what happens. Thank you.
I've been asked to share my thoughts about the year that is passing away and the new year that is coming. Of course, it's never the year that changes. It's always the same measure of 365 days. But with any luck, we change. As Chesterton observed, the object of a new year is not that we should have a new year, it is that we should have a new soul. The conversations we have on Grill Country are, we hope, helping some of you with that transformation and restoration. We have been blessed with some extraordinary guests this year, and we are lucky to have an incredibly intelligent and passionate audience. We hope that we can grow with you in 2023 and beyond. I hope to begin writing again in 2023. I wrote for most of my life from my early teens until my early 40s and stopped abruptly in 2014 after a health crisis and the breakup of my first marriage shortly after. And I have barely written a word since. Look for some written content in Grail Country in the coming year, and we may start doing some more content related to fiction. I'm looking at doing a long treatment of Gene Wolfe's Earth of the New Sun series in 2023. And of course, we'll continue to delve into the esoteric and sociological and intend to tackle Yakabum as the signature of all things in 2023. I hope everyone has a blessed new year.
So 2022 was a big year for me, as I not only moved to a different country, but also got married and sort of changed the trajectory of where my life was going to pursue this new life. And it's been really interesting to watch as I put this path that I was moving towards on hold or to the side to pursue this different life that I didn't necessarily expect to be walking, but which has shown itself to be increasingly beautiful and something that has opened my mind to a lot of different things about the world and the way I should be living in it. And so I guess for 2023, I don't have any specific hopes. It's hard to know what to hope for when it feels like a lot of the things I had hoped for were not necessarily the most important. But I guess my hope is that I continue to learn and grow in curiosity about the world and people, and that this new life and this new stage that I found myself in shows me what it is to be more human, what it is to be more loving and caring and grounded in my community and my reality, and find the joy and the beauty in those things. Well, at least that's a good place to start.
Greetings from New York City. 2022 has been a very full and joyful year for me, not least because I got married back in May to Susanna. We've been really enjoying our first few months together. We had a honeymoon in Vienna and in Cassis and Marseille, and we're currently dividing our time between New York City and Stoke-on-Trent, very different places. Stoke-on-Trent is in the West Midlands in the UK, and New York City is, according to the people here, the centre of the world. I think London's the centre of the world, but this is a close second. After a number of years of very little travel, hardly any travel at all from 2020 to 2021, this has been a year that's been absolutely packed with travel. All over the place, teaching at various events, travelling between the US and the UK, visiting other places in between. We spent a day in Oslo, for instance. And so it's been a very significant change of pace for me. After 2 years, again, of an intense single project, my Biblical Reflections project, this has been a year that's been full of just a wide variety of projects and tasks, teaching, traveling from to and fro, doing different events, writing projects of various kinds, getting back into writing articles again, which I hadn't been doing for a while, setting up a new free Substack, and many other things besides. And so the balance between the sort of focus that solitude and rootedness give and the stimulation and the possibilities for growth and connection that mobility allows for, that has been a balance that I've been trying to strike at this time. I haven't quite reached it, but the next year is going to be a continued period of trying to establish that balance. I really enjoy both of those things. I'm more of an introvert and someone who's inclined to solitude by nature, but I've always found that the serendipity of connection is an incredibly powerful catalyst for thought, for projects, for doing all sorts of things. Sometimes a bit too much of a catalyst. I have too many projects and not enough time or energy with which to do them. But being able to connect with certain people and connect certain people together has been one of the blessings of the past year, forming a network of people that are friends and colleagues and collaborators and people that we can be co-belligerents with has been a real blessing for me and Susanna. The power of connecting the right people with other people who will be able to bring out their best, to assist them in what they're doing, encourage each other in their respective tasks, it's an incredibly powerful thing. And so for ourselves and also for others, this is an important part of what we believe we're called to do. My Biblical Reflections project is going to be, again, part of my focus at the beginning of this year. I'm trying to finish off the audio version of it, which I was hoping to finish last year, but got sidelined by various other things. And then to produce the transcripts of that for Lexham, which will be made into a published version as a whole Bible commentary project. I've got other writing projects. I want to return to my Theology of the Sexes book, Heirs Together, and get that finished off. I also want to work on a book on numerology with James Bajon, which has been a delight to research. We're really looking forward to getting our thoughts down on paper, and maybe even at a certain point in the future have a follow-up volume getting into the really deep, weird numerology things that we found in scripture along the way. Getting to know and love a new place in New York City has been part of the challenge and the delight. I am not naturally a city person, but New York City is really warming on me. I really like the place. I like the way there's so much life on the street and in the subway. It feels like a place, again, where serendipity can happen and significant connections. And it also helps to have some great bookstores nearby. Maybe not as good as the ones in London, but they are pretty good, particularly the Strand bookstore, where we have spent an awful lot of time. Making new friends is another important part of this next year. In the UK and the US, we're trying to develop our network of friends and collaborators and really think towards long-term projects. And a long-term project that we're trying to consider how, as a couple, we might be able to work towards something that's a lifelong project. So, 2023, I'm hoping, is going to be a year of growth, of productivity, of new connections, of travel, but not too much travel, and an opportunity to really grow in our lives together, to grow closer together, and to grow closer to the Lord in our journey in studying His Word together, in thinking about His truth, and in spending time connecting with His people. Thank you very much, and I hope that you and yours will have a blessed 2023 too. Happy Christmas.
Happy New Year, Bern. I have been thinking a lot about the New Year because I actually start my New Year's with the liturgical calendar at the start of Advent at the beginning of December. So I did a reflection that I wrote my children and that I thought about my own, sort of resolutions for New Year's. And I just wanted to share with you what some of my hopes for the New Year are. First of all, I love that the liturgical New Year starts in the quiet and dark of the year, at least in the Northern Hemisphere. That's sort of like new life beginning in a womb, which is, of course, the Advent theme. And, but the temporal and the eternal sort of intersect here, and that we all come up with these new resolutions at this time. And I've been thinking about what I want to take away from lockdown. This is my first Christmas with fully out there, celebrating with friends, going out to dinner, midnight mass. It was fantastic. But also, what did I take away from being in this enclosed space with loved ones and friends for a period of time but also at the same time, connecting with this much wider internet community. And what does that mean? So how do I create the same sort of authentic relationships I have in my physical community, in the wider internet community? And I think part of it is your project. You have taken, with your recent meeting of Paul VanderKlay, in Europe with other people to sort of develop an embodied aspect to this internet relationship, which is really what the sanctification of technology is all about, or sanctification in general, is to change the physical into something. You know, we can't just have heaven and earth, we have to bring them together. And it sort of reminds me of a thinker I've yet to really explore myself, which is Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, whose name I probably just massacred, which is, you know, the idea that this is a whole new neural network. And just like any new giant change in the world, how are Christians going to change it and impact it? So there's the idea of moral progress, which I think most of us feel is malarkey. Everyone is born with faults, and we usually don't even perceive half of what's wrong with us till, you know, the second half of life. So moral progress, but there's also this other idea that comes out in Tom Holland's Dominion, in that the kingdom is sort of unveiling itself as history proceeds. So our choice then is, how are we going to participate in the unfolding in the kingdom? And that involves, you know, how we use the internet. And to that end, one of my resolutions, and I should say hope and prayer for this new year, is that I'll go to a festival in Wales that's being run by this gentleman who wrote A Pilgrimage of Paradoxes. His name is Mark Clavier. And get to his festival in Wales, but also hopefully to get to the event that you're planning in Georgia. I'd really love that. So little do you know, Bern, but I might be showing up there. Happy New Year. Hope that's good news. Bye.
Hello, my name is Maximus Magyar, and this year was big for me. I moved from central Illinois to Hile, which is a little town in Sierra Leone in West Africa. I moved here as a field worker for this aid organization called First Things Foundation. It's kind of an Orthodox-inspired organization, and they threw a Georgian-style kepi for me before I left, so I got to invite my friends and my family and the people that I'll not see for the 2 years that I'm here, and experience that tradition with them. For many of them it was new, and for me it was kind of new. I'd heard about it, but not participated in them very much before, so that's something that I'll certainly never forget. Yeah, moving here has been sort of mind-bending, and I would say kind of soul-bending. And so my goals for the new year are, a lot of them revolve around, I want to learn the local language. I want to figure out how to integrate myself into the culture here to the extent that that is possible and appropriate, so that I can better do the aid work that I was sitting here to do. Just to give you a little bit of a flavor of the place, when last week a neighbor of mine had, some neighbors of mine had their first child, and they also bought a puppy the same week. And I asked them about that, and they said that they got the puppy to protect the child from witches. They said that if a witch tries to approach their house, then the puppy will make a deal with the witch and demand that the witch count every hair on the dog's body, from the tip of its nose to the tip of its tail, before it can, come inside and hurt the people in the house. And the dog's actually tricking the witch because if the witch gets near the end of the tail, then the dog will scoot around on the ground and make the witch lose count. So I'm actually in the city of Freetown right now. I'm visiting for Christmas. You can see that here. And Happy New Year, everyone. Gagi Marjos.
Hello there, Bern. You asked your viewers to make a short video about the previous year and what's in store for the future. So here it goes. I'm Mils. I'm from Belgium. I live in Belgium. And I discovered your channel early this year, so that had somewhat of an impact. But what really defined my year, at least, is the fall I made in the previous one. Very silly fall walking the dog, and I broke my ankle in 3 different places. And that really changed a lot. Physical rehab, I couldn't even walk without crutches until New Year's Day. but still had a few months to go. After that, we had a lot of plans and intentions that didn't quite go through. Currently, I'm home alone most of the week, taking care of the dog and the house, because my wife is in some kind of philosophical personal retreat. It's very fun, doing a lot of projects, but it's difficult as well. And what we've come to realize after the wedding of my wife's daughter, and after a few events that happened in the world or were going on, the division, death of the queen, death of an era, they say, the war, of course, in Ukraine, the politics going on. We really feel we need to leave this city, which has been our home for decades. We partially grew up here as well, although we stayed in different places too. And it's not the same as it was. Is it getting old? Is it getting bored? Yes, but we're also getting wiser, I think. And this is not the place where things are going to happen. So we're thinking about moving east of our country, probably, not Georgia. But maybe further, I don't know. We still have connections in the north, in Scandinavia, maybe in Poland, Slovakia, I don't know. We'll have to see. But because we have our own ideas, we want to get creative with our own ideas. Theater, writing, that sort of stuff. And, of course, what I'm hoping for in the new year, on a very concrete level, of course, is that this war, that needs to go away. I mean, it's taking too long. It's not a black swan event, maybe, although it is something we've all been involved in. I mean, it was our politicians who were there on the Maidan Square, Belgian and Dutch liberals, as in European economic liberals, and what should have been a very good news show turned out to be a nightmare. And for the people of Ukraine, for everyone involved, the Russians too. I mean, there's no black and white in that. That needs to end. And then I hope that brings some stability and some headroom economically also for us and a lot of people to pursue plans, more even than what COVID did. So that's it. Special year, and given us a lot of ideas to rekindle our communities, our past, our interests, our talents, and do it somewhere else. That's it. Bern, have a very merry but also a very blessed Christmas. Your viewers too, everyone out there, and a good, fortunate 2023. Bye.
Hi, I'm David Walker, here to give a summary about what I thought about 2022 and what 2023 might look like. Here in my little cluttered room, I didn't want to pick it up because I thought it would add texture. But I was thinking about today what I would say about 2022, and one word that kept coming up was expansion. I put myself out there more than I have with other artists, getting to talk to them through kind of this network that's been set up through this little corner. Maybe like another word. Another analogy would be kind of like tilling a field, getting a field ready to be planted. I think people that are a little antsy might think that this year was like a year of first fruits. I think more of this year being a year of like pulling weeds, scoping out the ground, that sort of thing, much more than really watching fruits grow, because I think that's what next year is going to be all about. I think I know of a couple projects that are bubbling under the surface, some even that I'm involved in, that I think, as Grizz says, will start to embody much more next year. And so I'm really excited for next year. I'm very thankful for this year because of this like kind of internal and external expansion that I've definitely noticed. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
Hey Bern, this is Eric from Iowa, and I want to first congratulate you on finishing How We Got Here. It was a great meta history, wonderful series. I enjoyed it, and it was very useful to me to try to put modern culture in perspective. 2022, I didn't like it. Very bottled up year. People were very closed. I think a lot of things contributed to that. In general, there was a lot of censorship. Without naming names, 2 very controversial celebrities lost everything for speaking their minds. And I think it's created a great deal of fear to speak your mind. On top of that, there is a war going on overseas that has made it very, very unpopular to share certain opinions, one way or the other, no matter where you're living. That's what happens during wartime. And my fear is that all of this has made people nervous to be honest, to say the things that are going on in their soul. And I can't get through to people anymore. I don't really have a crack in the door for spiritual discussion. People generally don't even exert enough effort to tell you that they're an atheist or even an agnostic. I think they really just don't care anymore. And I remember people caring back, especially in 2015, 2016 during the election. I remember people caring during the coronavirus lockdowns because they had a very rare opportunity to think. They had several weeks just alone with themselves in their soul. And I don't, of course, hope for another lockdown. I don't hope for anything crazy to happen like that. But my hope for 2023 is that either something happens like the election in 2015, 2016 that gets people talking, that gets people challenging their opinions, that kind of stirs the pot a little bit, or that America gets some rest again, that people are able to look inside of themselves, like in the first few weeks of 2020, that they have that opportunity to be introspective, and that creates that crack in the door for the gospel to get through, for Jesus Christ to be proclaimed as Lord, and for people to begin to want that healing, that they're able to look away from the TikToks and the distractions and to really find themselves, to find God, to find meaning in their life, because they aren't going to find it if things keep going the way that they do. I don't have real discussions anymore, and it's tiresome because I know what I believe. I want other people to know what they believe, to find meaning, to find purpose, and to not just be a slave of their cell phones.
Hey everyone, this is Van Ho's ear, listening with a severed ear, not literally, and I'm just giving my thoughts on 2022. This is after Christmas, so I hope everybody had a good Christmas, and I wish you a happy New Year. I hope your friends and family are well. And I just want to thank Bern for doing this. It's pretty nice. And my thoughts on 2022. So I'm in Canada. And, long story short, the story here is coming to an end, and that's pretty much how it is. 2022 and 2021 to me felt like the same year. It's sort of just this COVID withdrawal. And, with the situation in Canada, I'm not nihilistic or cynical about it, for one, because, I have the faith with me. And anyway, it just felt like 1 year, and we're still in this weird COVID withdrawal. But the thing is that it's kind of like what's been going on in TLC and on Burn Power's channel, how there's this enormous potential for a new culture. There's this huge space that's not being taken up that people in these corners can jump into and hop into and do stuff like, creating real works of art that really reflect the world that we're living in. And all its complexities and its truths and its darkness. I see huge potential with music, that people pick up instruments again and learn to start singing again, and the music has integrity, and there's cultural reflection in the music as well, and that leads to things deeper down the line and more sincere and more communal. There's potential with film. You can just make a real culturally reflective film with your iPhone, which is something, that's something. I mean, there's just this space of enormous potential that I've seen not really being taken up much, except in these little corners. But, it's conversations and stuff and talks. It's not really a lot of music and everything. And I do think that that's going to start to grow. It's kind of like the underground of the 80s, sort of. But it's like this, it's on YouTube. And, it's kind of like that. Except it's not as dark. It's not, it's where the hope is, rather than all the cynicism and darkness. So that's more or less my thoughts. And I had an old coworker, and he had this hockey saying, "Head up, stick down." So head up, stick down, everybody, and be careful with those scissors.
Hello, Anadromist, Burn, and viewers. Merry Christmas to everyone. This year, I don't know even where to jump in. This whole year feels like kind of a wash of just so many different things, positive and negative. That's kind of a theme for me in general. It's just people ask me how I'm doing. I say that I'm doing good and bad at the same time. I don't really know how to say, but this year has definitely been a lot of good and bad. And I guess to start with important things, I feel my faith kind of dying and rising to new life at the same time in ways that I won't even get into, just in a way that I would think that's a good thing overall, but the dying part, it's hard to put that all into perspective. It's not exactly a pleasant thing. It's kind of a troubling thing. But I think that's how it has to be sometimes. I started grad school about exactly a year ago, last January, so my first full year of grad school. That's going well. I mean, it's going well, but I feel just burnt out more and more after each semester, and I just sometimes wonder how much I can keep doing it. And since I'm hoping to go for an academic kind of career, I mean, I have to be realistic with myself, but also just put in the work. It's definitely going to be a lot of work. So things are looking up, even though they're hard. Let's see, it's been very lonely. I left my group of friends. Making friends is always a challenge for me, but I did make friends. in the last few years, and now I left them, and I see them a few times a year when we get together for many weddings. So this has been a year of many weddings. But other than that, I mean, I haven't really replaced my group of friends. Met a few people, who knows, even maybe met a lady who I'm getting to know slowly over time. Never really had anything like that happen much in my life, so there's definitely a lot that's positive. I think it's just things are overwhelming. Things are definitely emotionally difficult. They're especially when it comes to the loneliness, you know, when you're going through stuff, there can just be kind of a darkness, a kind of an existential feeling of just like, you know, what am I doing? Like, what is really the whole trajectory of my life actually for? What's going on? You know, where's my actual role in life? You know, when am I going to settle down? When am I going to feel like I can say, oh, this is my home. This is my home. These are my people. You know, I still have places to go, new things to do, and all of that, but you know, and I'm very ambitious. I'm a young, ambitious scholar and all of that. But you know, I know that there's going to be so much that's much more important when I, you know, settle down with someone and even have kids. You know, I don't feel ready to have kids, but I want to have kids, so I want to become ready to have kids. So I'm thinking about all these things, and it's a lot of pressure. And I'm trying to basically just keep moving forward, keep doing what I gotta do, and not get too daunted by everything that I'm going to have to do. So that's I think that's a big theme for this last year, is being willing to take up those kind of challenges. And I'm running out of time on here, so yeah, I think that's actually pretty good. And yeah, again, Merry Christmas.
Hello, my name is Teddy, and welcome. I'm talking to you from Israel, from the most southern hills of the Levant. I want to tell you a little bit about my year. It was the most full and rich years of my life. First of all, exactly a year ago, on the 24th of December, I joined the Discord channel, but by name of Bridges of Meaning. After a few weeks, I managed to meet Paul VanderKlay on a live stream, which was interesting. I've been listening to him for 2 years now. And then with a few members from Bridges of Meaning, I started a book club. And for half a year, we read Crime and Punishment, 2 chapters a week. It was grueling work, but it gave me so much. It gave me the strength to go and do something with my nephew. So after a few months, I started with my nephew a movie club because he's a movie enthusiast, and we managed to do every single week a different movie, and we go over excellent movies like Hugo Boss, Scorsese, and The Searchers, and Snowpiercer, and West Side Story, and many different other movies that I'm really proud of him starting to get the feel of what a good cinema is, and not just regular Marvel movies. The other thing that happens because of the Bridges of Meaning Discord, I started my religious life and I started praying. And with myself before bed at night, and interesting things started. I started to pray for my transgression to subside and to deal with them and to really take responsibility for them. And a miraculous thing happened during the spring. A friend of mine invited me to his wedding, and there I met a couple that I was friends, and we had a feud, and it was my fault, and we haven't, like, I lived with them and we haven't spoke for 3 years, and I knew that I'd done something wrong, but I just didn't know how to bridge that. And when I met them in the wedding, it was such easy to just reconcile that and just leave it to pass, and now we're back friends, and which is amazing. We are friends again, and I'm so happy that somehow sorted itself out. Another thing that happened is the war in Ukraine, which touched our family a little bit. My two parents are on the other sides of the fence. My father is for Russia and my mother for Ukraine, and we have like a very awkward dinner conversations. And in the beginning of the war, I have an aunt that still live in St. Petersburg, and we brought her here to Israel. So she was living with us for a month, and I hope Burn Powers managed to show her a photo of her sitting in the kitchen and making some pilmeni, which is Russian dumplings. And after a month, we managed to jab her with the Pfizer vaccine and sent her to her son, who lives in Texas. And now her son trying to force her to stop smoking, and she's insisting, like, after 70 years of smoking, I'm not stopping. She's 85, and it's really funny, their dynamics between them. And during closer to the summer, I started to prepare for Landau, that the conference of Bridges of Meaning, and Burn Powers was there as well. And part of it was to discover Burn Powers. I never heard of him, and I was hooked by his videos. He managed, through listening to his videos, I felt that a certain anxiety and depression in me just subsiding. Why? I don't really know, but he managed to ground me into reality somehow. And I'm really appreciative of him because of that. I started to do videos with other people who are going to be in Landau, and made few connections and few friends. And that was an amazing experience for the preparation. And the sorry thing is that I promised that I will continue that after Landau, but I just felt I didn't have like this pinnacle of purpose of meeting, because before Landau, I knew that I was going to like meet those people, and after it's like dissipated, and then I kind of lost some of the purpose that I had before that, and I'm really ashamed that I promised a lot of things to members of the community, that I will maybe do some videos, maybe continue to have a connection, but I didn't stuck with that. Another things that happened great because of Bridges of Meaning, I come across a friend who was a random conversation with Paul. He was also named Paul. He's an older gentleman from Bristol. We have an excellent friendship. We have a conversation once in a week, and he helps me a lot. For the first time in many, many years, I returned to do some university classes. And for me, it was all my life, it was really, really difficult to do those classes. And he taught me a really good lesson, which is good enough. Like, do the stuff good enough to pass, and that's it. And that's the reason that I'm actually doing those videos for you right now, because I'm doing something that is just good enough. Because if I was thinking about it and trying to do it perfect, you will never see it. So I really appreciate of my friendship with Paul Baker. The thing that happened just before Landau, when I went to Landau, I was sitting on this floor and tried to stand up. And about half an hour before I left home, I tore my meniscus. And during Landau, I was like struggling, going with a cane everywhere. And 2 weeks ago, I done an operation, and I fixed my knee. I still need to do a lot of work on it, physiotherapy, and I actually look for the challenge. I think I will challenge myself even more, and in a couple of months, go to do maybe half a marathon or something like that, a marathon in Tel Aviv, and I hope I can manage to prepare myself for that. It will be a challenge. I hope I can manage. Another thing, after I returned from Landau, I went to Jordan Peterson event in Jerusalem, and I interviewed a few people. I just wanted to hear a few stories of people that Jordan Peterson influenced them. The conversation was excellent. I thought I would publish them, but I never did, and I'm sorry for not doing that. But the fact that I was there standing with a microphone and interviewing people was great with this microphone. And the last thing, and probably the most difficult thing for me for the end of the year, that when I moved here to my parents' house back 3 years ago, I took our old dog upon myself, and I took her old age into my own hands, and we've done walks each day, and I massaged her every day and cut her hair and try to do for her as much as I could. And a month ago, when my parents was in Sri Lanka for a vacation, she got a stroke and she couldn't walk and couldn't drink. And I put her down and I buried her in our backyard. I included some photos, and you can see that. And she taught me so much. For this last 3 years, she taught me so much. She taught me how to take responsibility for a living creature and not to get angry because of annoyances and because of some grumpiness that she had, or the lack of energy, and just devotion. And with her death, a few things is in front of me. One is I promised that I was kind of bound to my house and to her for this last 3 years. And I said that as soon as she's gone, I promised Bern that I will come to Georgia and visit him. And I'm dreading to write this letter to him for the past month. And yeah, and the second thing is that because of COVID and the fact that I got a really good unemployment paycheck from the government, and after the unemployment paycheck finished, I just said I will keep her company, Vili's company, until she dies, and after that I'll continue and start doing. And now all of those things are over, and now I'm looking at this new year with dread because of new opportunities that I need to start, and the new obligations that I need to start, and opportunities that I have, and I'm scared. I'm scared of doing that. So this is my year, and I want to ask for help. Please reach out to me. I hope Bern will add my email, and take me accountable for the future year. I really want to start what I'm doing with my book club and those going through stories, analyzing them. I want to maybe do something like that in YouTube. And I know everything how to do, but I just don't lack the encouragement and the nudging. And I want to take the fairy tales and the stories that that Byrne is talking about and try to dive deeply in them and break down them deeply. So that's one thing. The second, I want to visit him in Georgia and develop our relationship further. So this is my year, and I thank you for listening. And I wish you Merry Christmas, Chanukah Sameach, and S Novim Godom. So thank you very much. Goodbye.
What was 2022 like for me? Probably some of the most difficult times of my life have been the last few years. This last year, I'm beginning to grow through the pain, grow through it. I'm realizing that the troubles of this world are a given, and it's just a fallen world. My naivety I had before was probably more comforting, but it wasn't reality. So most of the struggles I have aren't with the conditions of this world. I know they're difficult. I know they will be. I'm just trying to maintain growth and identity within myself. Learning that I'm responsible for this spiritual journey I'm on, my accountability before God, and realizing that the sources of my pain are not God. I will die on that hill. I will not blame God. I see 5 reasons why bad things do happen. First is I do stupid things. Second, people around in my world do stupid things. Third, we live in a dangerous planet, a fallen world. It's corrupt and it's evil. There's tornadoes. There's dogs that'll bite. So on. We have Satan. That's one here. He hates our guts and wants to destroy us. This last one, God has boundaries if we violate them. So you can say the last one's God, but it's because of his boundaries he's established. But on the other hand, literally, there's this one meeting that one, being this is God's love. This one, Satan, he might be the source of a lot of problems, but he's a fallen creature. This one, the world, sure, it's a difficult world, but the creation mandate in Genesis 1 explains that we are to harness that. That's good. This one, people do stupid stuff and hurt us, but we need them. We need each other. And this one, I'm not a total idiot. I mean, I know some things. I can think. I can depend on myself some. And I'm learning that. I'm learning that I can be accountable for my own behavior. And I have to learn that. I have to learn to be accountable. Trust God, yes. But he's not going to do everything for me. And that's what I'm learning this year. That's what I learned in 2022. It's more personal. It doesn't really relate so much to the world at large. I know it's going to remain the way it is. It's going to remain a mess. I just don't want to be part of the mess. And I won't be. I won't be part of the mess. I want to be part of the solution. Yeah. And that's where I am at the end of 2022. Thank you.
Hey everyone. Overall, 2022 was a very positive year for me. In my personal life, I just grew and developed so much in terms of cooking and friendships and family and growing relationships that were very positive and learning a lot of new things. Adventuring out into the world and in ways that I, hadn't previously done. On the grand scheme of things, it feels uneasy to me going into 2023, But I think that's mostly because of media manipulation. Getting together in person with other real-life people is what matters. And I think that with the current culture and the way people are so individually on their own, it's easy to shut down and not interact with others in the way that we should be. So going into the next year, I do feel uneasy, but I think I've felt uneasy ever since the world originally shut down in 2020. So I don't think that feeling is probably going away for a while. And it really only does go away if you just don't pay attention to what's going on, which can be good and bad. I pray that 2023 will be transformative and that people will calm down a bit. I think hopefully that's what's been going on in 2022, that tensions between groups, especially in America. I just want things to die down a bit because there was such crazy divide over the period of time with the pandemic and all that we just don't need to be having. So, I pray that everyone can get together in person, have real conversations, develop meaningful friendships and relationships, and that is the trend moving forward. This past year, I started a podcast with two friends called I Will Not Live in the Pod. And the entire idea is, let's get out of here and have these conversations not only start online, but live in real life and through our actions. So I pray that that's what the future holds, and I do think there are a lot of people in my generation and younger who want things to go that way. So, wishing everyone a blessed and wonderful 2023.
Hi, this is Paul. Bert asked me to do a 2022 retrospective. 2022 was a big year. I went to Europe for the first time in 2022. I think estuary sort of hit a new reality in 2022. I think this little corner of the internet developed in 2022. Jordan Peterson, I think, really sort of came back and got back in 2022 to the point where he again is, I think, making substantive contributions to the questions of religion and science. I think 2022 was a year of, I think, a little bit of angsty growing pains for this little corner. I did an event in Chicago before Synod. Obviously, this summer we had events in Europe. We finally were able to do the Thunder Bay event in September of 2022, and Jordan restarted his biblical series. So in terms of this little corner, a lot of stuff has happened. Towards the end of the year, we began seeing the just chatting phenomenon going on. Jacob really sort of got that going. A number of the This Little Corner channels have, some of them have reached, quite a bit of maturity. Karen Wong's channel, Sam's channel, Transfigured. Karen Wong's is The Meaning Code. I mean, she began doing Michael Levin conversations, really reaching out with all sorts of other individuals and scholars, doing a lot of great work on her channel. So I think 2022 was sort of a maturing year for This Little Corner. And as with all maturing years, you then get into a question of where is this going? And towards the end of the year, we've had a lot of those kinds of questions. There's a little bit of drama around the German estuary meeting, and that provoked a lot more conversation about institution and structure and hierarchy, and those conversations have by no means ended. Personally, I look at what happened this year and think, wow, I've been truly blessed. I was just grabbed a stream with Sam and Father Eric and expressed to both of them the reality that now we're having the kinds of conversations I've always wanted to have, but now I'm able to have, and with a breadth and a quality of people that I never would have imagined before.
And I think the big goal of this little corner is to create spaces where people can participate in better conversations with better and better conversation partners as we all get better and better at it as we practice it together. And this is all in the quest of, in my opinion, seeking God, seeking truth, seeking wisdom. And I think as 2023 kicks off, I think we're going to see a continuation of that. As is always the case with every new year, there will be surprises. There will be things we can't anticipate. We lost Mary Cohen in 2022, which is a real loss. Mary was a delight, a bright and shining star, brought so much wisdom and joy and energy to the corner. And yeah, we didn't lose Jordan Peterson, which was a good thing. And in many ways, he's back. So there's a lot of good stuff going on. And Bern, of course, is continuing to labor in Tbilisi, Georgia. I got to meet Bern in person at the German festival in 2023. The videos of that festival will be released. We'll see how many more live events we do. Kind of the kicking off of live events for this little corner happened in 2022 in a bigger way. So a lot has happened. And so I feel thankful to God for the ways that God has blessed me. And as we sort of muddle forward in 2023, I believe God will continue to do things in our midst that bless and surprise us. So there's my end of year retrospective. Have a happy new year.
So there you are. I'd like to thank all the people who shared a bit of their story this year. Let me just give you a bit of mine. For me, it was a very good year and then became complicated near the end because good things never last forever. You know, you have to have some times when things get strange. So the good thing was the first thing was that I ended up in Prague to try to get work on a book getting published, which kind of got shrunk the project from what I wanted and went from being all of my puppet-related interviews into one book into just Czech-related stuff. And that's taking a bit of time. We'll see how it comes in the next year. Then I came home. Oh, yeah, I did have problems with my airplane tickets, and then I had to reroute my trip. I was in Prague for February 24th, which was quite an intense experience because the Czechs have a real suspicion of everything the Russians do. And so they were out on the streets in, I think it was 80,000 people at one point there. And I made some videos about that. But the most important thing was I had to reroute my trip, and I realized this about the 20th of February, that I had to reroute my trip because I was slotted to go through Kiev, or as we're now saying, Kyiv. Kyiv is more the Ukrainian pronunciation. Kiev is more the Russian. They say both, but I think we'll probably be saying Kyiv more due to what's happened in the last year. So they did allow me to switch my trip. Interestingly enough, the person I talked to on the phone was saying things like, well, are you sure you want to do this? I'm going, yeah, I'm sure. They were in somewhere else in Europe, and they didn't understand what I was talking about, that things are getting a bit hot in Ukraine. I'm afraid something's going to happen. Anyway, I got back. Most of the COVID restrictions were gone within a couple of months by March, April, and here we were much looser about it than they were, say, in Germany, or Canada for sure, or heaven forbid, China. So time went on. Now, one of the things that happened immediately, and I felt it on the plane ride here, was suddenly all of these, Ukrainians had come here, but not nearly as many as Russians had come here to get away from Putin. And so we had this very strange, and we're still in this zone, because what happened later in the summer was then Putin had this mobilization thing, and suddenly 300,000 Russians passed through here, maybe 100,000 stayed, which changed everything. Now, a couple of things that happened. One of the strange things, because of the Russians coming from the beginning, was the value of the Georgian lari went up against all predictions. That is to say, because this Russian and American currency they were bringing in and all this other stuff was happening. And so, for instance, this is where the weird part starts. In March, the lari was at $1 equals 3 lari and 40 tetri. So that's their cents. By last week, it was 2 lari and 65 cents. So about a third of the value of the lari against the dollar went down. Meanwhile, all the prices started to go up here by about 20%. And then all the landlords got greedy. Literally. It's like there was this huge conspiracy. So they all collectively started raising their rents. And I thought I was safe because I had a contract for 3 years. But no, I won't go into the whole thing, but let's just say my rent rose by 50%. So with the dollar down, the prices and the rent going up, it's like suddenly my world here looked very, very different. Nevertheless, I did go to the German Bridges of Meaning Festival in Landau, Germany. And that was a great time because I ran into the same thing that I did with all of the people who responded to my call for memoirs of the year and hopes and fears. People desperate to talk. And I think part of this is there was more antagonism before COVID. Then during COVID, people were kind of, hey, can I talk to you? But they couldn't really. But now I think that what I saw in Landau were people who were hungry to talk about substantial things. And that is one thing I hope continues. I also continued on into Germany and met more friends. But I'm going to say that I still haven't made my videos on my German trip yet, which I will put on my Georgian Crossroads channel. As well as I am putting up my 4 years here in anniversary in Georgia and what my life has been like and how my perspective on things has changed. So look for that. You really should be on my Facebook page if you're on Facebook, because that's where I tell the new things that are coming and all sorts of stuff like that. They get much more of that than anywhere else. So just a word there. But for me, the last 3 months of the year, with the exception of this whole rent thing, was just glorious here because culture had come back. Friends had come back. I had new friends. I'm getting together tomorrow for New Year's Eve with this guy, Nikki, and his wife from Belarus. They fled because they're afraid of what's going to happen there. And but besides that, there are more people. I've met other Russians. I've met other Georgians. My friends in puppetry have started being active again. I saw a great version of Don Quixote by the Tbilisi Chamber Theater. My friends at Budrugana Gagra, who do the hand shadow puppets, they took me on a couple of village tours where they perform for these small villages. And I still haven't made the videos on those yet, which will appear in different ways on both Georgian Crossroads and Gravity from Above. Just amazing stuff. Another friend of mine, Mariam, is a ballet dancer, an astoundingly good ballet dancer, and she works for the Georgi Alexidze ballet troupe. And they did a performance later that was just great. So the culture is coming back, and I feel like, okay, this is why I'm here. And also, I've just, like I said, been having better and better conversations. So that is how my year has been. Good things, difficult things, financially particularly, and then basically, with hope for the future. So what is 2023 going to be for me? Number one, I've got to get my library here. And unfortunately, with the financial situation, I'm afraid I'm going to have some kind of little crowdfunder in a month or so. I feel bad doing it because I really hoped it would work, but I'm not going to apologize anymore for that. I'll explain things when I decide to put that up. Number 2, I am going to have an event here that's going to be about 10 days long. Half the time it will be for cultural things, and half the time will be in the mountains. And it'll only be for a group of 12 or 13 people. And it won't cost that much once you get here, but there will be a cost of getting here. It will be in the first part of October. It'll be a gathering. Probably use the word gathering in the name somewhere. Think about that. Think about whether you want to come here. And like I said, there's only going to be 10 people. So once I officially announce it, I will have a video coming up probably sometime in January where I officially announce what's going on with that. Then you should go. The other thing is this. I am making a lot of videos, which is great. It's great for you. It eats up so much time for me. And I have to do a couple of things. I have 2 books that have been finished for years, essentially. One is all my essays on the Anadromist site, and the other, which is going to be in a book. And the other one is my novel, which everyone who's read it has come back to me and said, wow, but it's the kind of thing that the official publishers wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole, because do I care about political correctness? No. Even though I wrote this book in the year 2000, did I care then? No. So it's just been sitting there, and I've had interesting people read the book and get back to me and say, whoa, what is this? So I'm going to put both of those up on the Amazon. I have to use them, unfortunately, but at least temporarily get those out there, and I'll tell you when I get there. But what that means practically is that I have to probably back off a bit. So I'm just going to do one cute thing. Cute. I got 5 more in the cute series, but 1 per month, because if I just go whole hog on it, I'll never have the time to write. And the other thing is I will be doing a few more interviews, but that's about it for at least a month or 2 until I can get these things done, because it's going to require me going through that stuff and doing a lot of reading and getting it to a friend who can edit for me and such like that. So you will forgive me and encourage me, I'm sure. And I'd like to thank you, all of you who've been watching, for just coming aboard for the last year. And it has been a crazy year out there. It has been, I think, a meaningful year in many ways for all of us in one way. At least I hope it has been. If it hasn't been, start reaching out, start realizing the world isn't about you. There's much more in the world than just focusing on yourself. Although, at some point, a person does need to stop, turn around, look backwards, and deal with the dog that's running after them, that's chasing you through the mountain path. You need to do that, otherwise it will catch you. Or if that's too rough a metaphor, I could put it in white, fluffy, snowy terms and just say, yeah, there is a huge snowball with your name rolling after you, and you got to stop and deal with it, because it's just going to get bigger and bigger as it rolls down the hill, the way snowballs do. And the longer you wait, the more impossible it'll be to deal with it. So deal with it. We'll talk about that some other time. Feel free to leave a comment. Like I said, if you want more of these kind of videos, just leave a comment. Oh, somehow this ended up being long. But isn't that why you come to this channel? Thanks for coming along. As the Georgians say, dro a beat, which means temporarily. We'll just be gone from each other a little while, and then we will meet again.
A people without history is not redeemed from time. For history is a pattern of timeless moments.
some sort of touch with all the loose ends of this dizzy affair if I'm ever going to make heads or tails of it.